Welcome back to the Lifestyle Lifter Show, and today's guest is Jack Gadd. Jack is an online men's health and fitness coach based currently in the UK. So, Jack, welcome to the Lifestyle Lifter Show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a little while since I've last done a podcast, so I appreciate the invite on and for thinking of me.
Not at all, man. Not at all. Really a big fan of your content, Jack, and I will post your links and all at the end. But tell me, Jack, before we actually get you to share your backstory, share something about yourself that most people do not know.
Oh wow, most people do not know. I guess I'm quite reserved on social media, unlike a lot of other people. So there's probably a lot of things, but I'd say one of the main things that I probably don't share as much. Like I come from quite a martial arts background in the past before I started any weightlifting. So
Oh,
like
really?
a
Yeah.
long time before I even like was bothered about sort of lifting weights in the gym. I was really like quite focused on like taekwondo and MMA and like mixed martial arts. So I guess there's always been a sports focus there, but one of my things is I used to like getting punched and punching other people as well. So whether
How
that's a
many
good trait or
years?
not.
How many years do you still do the MMA, Jack, or is it all the gym now?
No, not anymore. Like I wish I did, but it's just finding the time between everything else. But I probably did it for about 6 years of my life, sort of intermittently. But no, I really enjoyed it when I was doing it. Just wish I could fit it in a bit more now.
Yeah. Oh, I really want to try out Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Nice.
Have you
Yeah.
ever done that, Jack?
I sort of thought about doing it, but when I did martial like MMA, it was more sort of on the side. It's not like cage fighting as such, but it was like all of the martial arts rather than just
Sure.
one
Yeah.
specific sort of
Yeah.
one that you did. But yeah, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does look like good fun.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, tell us, Jack, then. Um, Share a bit about your backstory. I feel we can resonate in a lot of things because you mentioned in your own personal story, it was kind of a case of being the skinnier kid in school and wanting to be lean and wanting to be a bit broader and or more muscular, similar to myself. So share, Jack, your story about how you actually got into fitness.
Sure, no, absolutely. So I started getting into fitness probably around about 15 to 16 years old. Like most kids, sort of coming out of college or going into college, you see all the other guys and you wonder why is everyone a lot bigger and more muscular than you. So immediately it was straight to Google to find out what was going wrong. What looked at a few YouTube videos, a few articles, watched things like Pump and Iron. Like I was obviously, I think like most people who start off in bodybuilding,
Classic.
quite inspired by Arnie and all of those. And kind of just started from there, really just trialing loads of different things that I read online. I can't remember what the name of the sort of site was, but there was this really popular site like back sort of 10 years ago, which like they would have the sort of rundown of all of like the famous influencers back then. So like for example, I think it's Greg Plitt, isn't it? He like he had his whole workout, had like his whole nutrition, what he would do, and I
Classic.
would just follow that. And like I had no replications towards like me and my lifestyle or anything else like that. I just literally follow that through and do exactly the same things. And to an extent, it did help because it just helped me obviously eat a bit better with my food and my nutrition. But I ended up getting to the point where I just went on this mega bulk for probably the best part of about 4 years. Um,
Okay, right.
yeah, so like if you like a lot of my pictures, obviously where I'm lean is like post competition during those days, but before that, not a lot of what I obviously have nowadays to actually post, and because I don't have those pictures anymore, is basically where I just spent a lot of time getting very fluffy, as you would call
Yeah.
it. So putting on a lot of body fat, getting really strong for my age, but sort of spending the work doing that, and I don't regret that. I think a lot of
Yeah.
probably kids nowadays are very focused on being lean and being aesthetic with the whole social media generation, but it kind of did lead the way and led the path to where sort of it helped with the competitions after that in years to come through building a bit of a base.
Yeah.
And it started from there. So it was one of those things which it was fun back then trying to eat 4,000 calories a day and get to the 200-pound club on the scale and everything else like that.
Oh my God, man. Yeah, that's insane. 4,000 calories a day at a young age. I remember actually as well. I was a big fan of The Rock, and obviously The Rock is amazing. And I looked at like his Hercules workout split
Oh
and his
yeah, I remember that one.
Hercules diet. Do you remember that? And I was looking at it like 8,000 calories a day. He was eating like, white rice and cod for breakfast. He had that like about three times, oatmeal, oatmeal, oatmeal. I was like, oh my God, how did he even get those calories in?
Like
Insane.
when I think back to it now, like I cringe at what I used to do. So like I used to work as like it I used to change like gas and electric meters, so you could class it as an electrician, but it's not really. So I'd be out on the road in a van and I would take prep meals with me and I'd go and buy like a 500 gram or kilo pack of mince, the full fat one, because obviously
Yeah.
we're trying to get more calories in. And I'd have that with a pack of Uncle Ben's rice, like between two meals. And then I would actually top it with olive oil as well.
Get
So,
those fats in, yeah.
oh my God, like thinking about it now, it just makes me cringe, like with how much calories were in it, but also eating cold rice, cold beef, drizzling
Yeah.
olive oil over the top of it to try and just make gains. It's just silly thinking about it now, but it was the only way I was thinking of getting calories in.
And Jack, seeing as you've gone both ways, I know you're currently in a cutting phase.
Mm.
I mean, I feel there's only one definite answer here, but I'm curious of your thoughts. What do you think is more challenging, doing a cut or doing a bull? And the reason I ask is because when you're eating that amount of food and you're going to bed and you're freaking stuffed, like it's not that comfortable either. We obviously know the reverse end where you're hungry going to bed, that's not enjoyable. So
Yeah.
what's your thoughts, Jack?
I think definitely a bulk is harder, in my opinion.
Wow, really
Yeah,
now?
I feel like on the mental side of things, it's harder to stick to for a lot of people. Like unless you,
Sure.
because I
Yeah.
think like I'm quite happy to be hungry and like not really be that satisfied with food. Like it doesn't bother me that much now. Now I've done it for so long, it kind of just feels
Yeah.
a bit more normal. But with bulking, I feel there's a mentality that comes into it where so many people try and do it for such a short amount of time and never see progress. You have to get over that mentality of putting on body weight, putting on body fat, trying to eat food all the time and
Yeah.
consistently improving your workouts and lift more each time you go in and have that mentality to always progress. I feel like that is quite difficult. But you might have a different sort of view on that where you might enjoy that more. I think because I've not bulked for so long now, I've probably
Sure.
forgot what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah. I just like last night going to bed, I was probably 3,400 calories deep, and I had like I what did I have? I think there was rice thrown in there, there was some oatmeal, there's some meat thrown in there, trying to limit the veggies at night, but it's like I woke up this morning then, Jack, and it was like you nearly still feel last night's meal in you, and you're like, oh God, give me I need my morning walk or some movement in the morning just to let that digest that bit better.
Yeah.
But I definitely find, to be honest, I'm much happier bulking than cutting because at the end of the day, you still do get to eat more food, which in
That's
my
the way.
opinion, anyways, it's like mentally it's more fatiguing. But
Mhm.
there's difficulties in both sides because, as you said, if you're doing a bulk, you have to give yourself permission that you're going to gain a bit of body fat,
Mm. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's not always easy to take if you're someone used to being relatively lean year round.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think if you're I think the longer you are leaner and the longer you stay leaner for, the harder it gets to like be okay with putting on more body fat. I've
Yeah,
certainly
yeah,
found that for sure. So
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm currently at the moment, Jack. But back to you, Jack. So in 2018, you competed in the natural bodybuilding competition in the UK. So would you mind just sharing a bit about that and what actually motivated you to do it in the first place?
yeah, so sort of prior actually 3 years before that in 2015, that was the first time I'd competed that year. So I'd sort of gone straight into like the novice shows and I dipped my feet into bodybuilding a little bit. And this was when I think I got third place at the finals that year. So it was like kind of, okay, I'm somewhat good at this. I feel like I probably could maybe devote a little bit of time towards it. So for a couple of years, I basically devoted the life to lifting, progressing, putting on as much muscle as I could to then go into that 2018 season. So in that season, it was really, really good because obviously it was like years of hard work that was essentially paying off as I was getting leaner and stepping on stage. I managed to win a British title, and I think it was fourth in another show as well. So it was kind of like a well-rounded off season to what I really wanted from it. When I set my kind of my sights on something, and the start of the year it was to essentially achieve a top three in Britain. And to go and win a British title was like the icing
Unbelievable.
on the cake. So I kind of felt like I reached the peak of what I could within the natural bodybuilding that I felt I was dedicated enough to do. Obviously, you can go on and do much further than that if you try
Yeah.
and go for world titles or pro cards and stuff. But I think I quickly realized after 2018 that that probably wasn't going to be my route. But I'm very glad that I've done it and did it, because it was sort of really gave me a lot of skills that I've learned now to relate into my clients and myself as well, to really kind of make sure that they get great results too.
So obviously you came first in 2018, but this wasn't just a case you decided to sign up a week beforehand, Jack. And even when you entered in 2015, I'm sure it wasn't just a case of taking time off completely. So when you set your sights in 2018 on winning that competition, how far back did your training schedule officially commence?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a long process when I think about it now. Like, it was a case of I knew the year before that I was going to be competing the next year to try and go for these sort of shows and to do as best as I could. And I think my training and dieting actually started in the January of that year, because I think I had to lose around about 40 pounds over the January to the October. So it wasn't
Okay.
something I could be like, let's do a 12-week diet,
Yeah.
because I would have never stepped on stage as lean as I could have. So I really had to make sure I set the sort of time zones in the right way to achieve obviously what I did in the end.
Wow. Yeah. And what would like a typical week of training then and nutrition would it look like for you, Jack?
Yeah, so in terms of like training, so I think I was doing 5 times a week at that time. So I think it was just a push pull legs, upper lower split. So
Yeah.
everything
I
twice a
love
week.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Really easy to do sort of back then.
Mm.
And I was just coming into full-time online coaching as well. So it kind of molded perfectly with the fact that I wasn't working my day job anymore. So I had the time to commit to it and just push
Yeah.
on. With cardio, be surprised I didn't do any. I didn't do any cardio. It was all just step based. So
Yeah.
my step goal was high. So it was about 15K a day that I was doing
Mm.
every
Yeah.
day. And it gradually tapered up, obviously, to that as the peak. And then calories, I think, went as low as about 1600 from probably about the mid 2000s, sort of throughout the January to the October, because of the way that the shows worked out and the sort of categories that I had to compete in. I needed to lose like another 8 pounds from my qualifier to then meet the sort of lightweight category that I needed to go into. So that meant the low food and the aggressive steps and everything else like that. But still, I didn't have to do cardio. So that's one of the things I kind of swear by when it comes to dieting, because I hate it.
Yeah, man. Oh, interesting though with it. Like it just goes to show though the power of just getting your steps up and
Massive, yeah.
not thinking that the job is done inside that hour in the gym. There's so much more that can be done by just increasing your activity. But Jack, did you take many diet breaks then from going from mid
Yes.
2000s to 1600? You surely didn't just sustain that for 9 or 10 months.
No, I think I'd be dead if I did.
Yeah, yeah.
There was probably about 2 diet breaks, and then there was probably like a weekly refeed when I got to the point of being on quite low food. Because when you get leaner, obviously the need for that is a bit more apparent and it's a bit higher, because your body just runs down really, really quickly. But in the lead up, there was probably like 2 full diet breaks and then just a weekly refeed, probably from like 8 weeks out, I imagine.
Yeah.
So not too bad, but it's one of those things when you enter trying to do a show heavier than you need to be, which looking back I probably was, you have a lot of weight to pull off, unfortunately. And 40 pounds doesn't just come off like that,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Wish it
Yeah.
did.
That being said, Jack, I'm sure you've had an experience before where you might get a message or something of somebody saying they have a holiday in like 2 weeks or a wedding coming up 3 weeks away. Is there any way you can help me out? So it just goes to show, Jack, isn't it, the importance too of giving yourself enough time so you're
Yeah.
not in panic mode.
Absolutely. Time is the best thing when it comes to
Yeah,
dieting. The more time you have, the better the diet will be. And I think the more enjoyable it is as well, because you're not super rushed to get to the end goal.
absolutely. Absolutely. And Jack, you're someone who so obviously that would have been at your like your absolute when you stepped up on stage there, that's not sustainable either, like maintaining that
Mm.
low real lean body fat percentage. But you're someone who stays lean year round. What would you say is the difference in commitment between being lifestyle lean versus being like stage ready?
Mm. That's a good question. It's a really, really good question, actually, because I was just thinking about this the other day. Because, like, the diet I'm doing now in comparison to before, there's quite a few differences in terms of like where the commitments lie. And I think the biggest commitments from what I've seen is the difference in your steps. So I'm not like rigid with steps at the minute at all. And also the difference in how you track foods. So back then, I would track everything that had a calorie in. So this would be things like lettuce, tomatoes, cucumber, sauces, Monster Energies, sauce, like anything really which is quite negligible. Whereas now I don't do that. I'll estimate a lot of foods right now and just kind of say, okay, that's probably that amount of calories. Whereas before, it would be like a rigid process where I would try and figure out everything that was going into the meal and I would know exactly what was being eaten. So I think the level of accountability of knowing exactly what's in the food is one of the key parts, but also that accountability towards exactly hitting your step numbers and your cardio targets if you have them, or training. Like if I miss a training day at the minute, it's not the end of the world and it doesn't really change how I look. Whereas back then, if I missed a training day, things would obviously change a little bit when you're that lean and you're sort of at that point where you're trying to get to the peak of where you need to. So there's a few differences. Definitely just comes down to the meticulousness of it rather than anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I'm someone I like to say relatively lean like yourself, Jack, but I never stepped up in stage. The closest I did was 2 photo shoots. And I just found that second photo shoot really, really difficult. And it was
Yeah.
only a case of dieting for like probably 4 weeks, man. It was only like four pretty challenging weeks there. And I'm much happier now, much more content now with a bit more body fat, but my
Yeah.
calories are pretty much double what they would have been back then. So like for me, that's a trade-off I'm willing to make. So it's
Absolutely.
kind of trade-offs, Jack, really, isn't it? There's an opportunity cost for everything you pursue.
Mm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's always that trade-off, and the opportunity cost, I think, is the biggest thing. So many people want to be lean, but also so many people don't want to stop eating maybe their favorite foods for however long they need to, or at least cut down on it anyway, or have the choice between like a meal deal from Tesco or something, or you make your own food at home because you know it's got less calories in it.
100%. Yeah.
These are the things which are just that little
Yeah.
trade-off, I feel, between being lean and not. But yeah, it's it's funny to think about the trade-offs you have to make.
It's all in the moment of decision. And tell me then, Jack, so when it comes to training then, you've coached a lot of guys. What do you feel are some of the common mistakes that you see people make in the gym when it comes to either trying to drop a bit of fat or gain a bit of muscle?
I think the biggest common mistake is changing things up too much or getting bored of the same thing they do. So they have to feel like they need to do something when they go into the gym different each time, especially from a muscle building perspective. Like if you're really committed or really wanting to build muscle, perhaps you're a skinny guy or you're someone who is maybe just wanting to maximize muscle mass, the consistency of what you do in the gym week in, week out, from the exercises to the reps to the sets to the progressions, those are the four things that's really going to make you see like actual growth in what you do. If you're going from a flat bench press one week to then doing an incline dumbbell press on different rep ranges and then next week changing up again, there's no real true progression to really ever look back. And I think when you're in the gym, that's all you have to rely on is that visual and like progression with your lifts. So you have to be very focused on that if you're sort of really looking to make solid progress. Like as you get a bit later into your lifting career, you can probably let go of that a bit more. But if you're really looking to build muscle and even maintain it, whatever it might be, there's a massive importance in that, I do believe.
And how long do you feel, Jack, is the optimal time to follow a training program?
I tend to like make sure that the guys I work with follow it minimum for around about 6 to 8 weeks before we change things up. Usually that's when a deload is needed, and then we change things up and obviously do a
Yeah.
new split. But I think if I'm totally honest, people will see more success doing the same thing probably for a year in, year out, than changing things up too frequently. I just change them so people don't get bored, that's all. But
Yeah, yeah.
if it was me and like I had this goal of maximizing progress and nothing else, I'd probably just do the same thing week in, week out for as long as I could before it stopped working. And that could be
Before it's not
months or
working.
years, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like the analogy, Jack. If let's just say person A and person B were both trying to become fluent in Spanish, and person A did Spanish Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times a week, and person B Spanish on a Monday, French on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
German on a Friday. At the end of the 4 weeks, the 6 weeks, the 8 weeks, there's only going to be one winner there when it comes to who's at least closer to being fluent. And strength training is literally the exact same. As you said, getting that progressive overload, it's so, so important, and doing it consistently. Tell me, Jack, then, do you feel or yeah, do you feel there's any difference, or should your training vary if someone is in a gaining phase versus someone is in a cutting phase?
Yeah, sure. So I think over the years I've probably become more experimental with this with myself. So I've definitely found that when you're in that sort of cutting phase, as opposed to the gaining phase, it's okay to probably be a bit more biased towards switching a few things up or supersetting a few movements just to get them done a bit quicker.
100%. Yeah.
And I think that's probably my own bias leaving that. Like, if you asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have said it's the exact same thing. And to an extent, like, if you keep things the same as you do in a gain in muscle phase, you're probably going to do very well during a deficit as well. But I do believe that if you kind of have like your main core movements that are prioritized, everything else around it can probably be changed up quite often, and that would be okay. You're not going to lose muscle if you're eating enough protein, getting strong on your core lifts, and then having a bit of fun with the other stuff. I just feel in a gaining muscle phase, if you're sort of looking to grow, making sure everything is very much regimented is where you're going to make more progress realistically, rather than switching a few things up in a deficit, for example.
And what are your thoughts on training to failure then, Jack?
I like it. I do like it. I think it's there's always going to be an RAR, RP, like sort of reps and reserve debate,
Yeah.
isn't there? And I think over the years there's been a lot of different people who have said different things. But I think as long as you're not going balls to the wall so much that you then don't have enough energy for second, third, and fourth sets in exercises, then I don't see too much wrong with it. And a lot of it depends on the person's recovery capabilities. Most people don't really train to failure anyway. Like, even though
That's
they say
true.
they do,
Yeah.
I think if you ever record your sets and look back, even myself sometimes, I might be guilty of this. But yeah, I think most people just need to train to failure because it's probably a couple reps in reserve anyway.
After, oh, like even
Nice.
just the last day, I was doing like a decline dumbbell chest press, and you know when you're doing like a chest press, and you kind of give yourself like an idea, a target of how many reps you might get. Let's just say I think it was 12 I had in mind, and then when you get to the 12, subconsciously or not, it's like you start to slow down.
Mm,
But if you tell yourself there's 15 in you,
yeah,
you bang out 3 more reps. So I was like, I was gonna stop at 12. I probably had 3 or 4 more in me, but it was just like psychological. If you say it in your mind, it's like you'll just slow down naturally. So it's actually quite difficult to train to failure. What are your thoughts though on pushing like big compounds, the likes of squats and deadlifts to failure, Jack?
yeah. I think with like a squat and a compound, a squat and a deadlift, like they probably need to be treated a bit differently. But this is where I like to kind of switch up the rep ranges. So, like, for example, on a squat, have a couple top sets, which will be in a lower rep range, take them to failure because it's a lot easier than, say, taking 10 to 12 to failure. And then when you have
Absolutely.
your back off sets, you can then maybe drop the RP, the sort of reps in reserve a little bit. So
Yeah.
it just, I guess, depends on what you're trying to get from it. But definitely deadlifts to failure is no fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel deadlifts like anything over 5 reps, anything over 8 reps, anyways. It's freaking cardio. You
Yeah,
mentioned you're not the biggest fan of cardio, Jack. 8 reps of deadlifts is like the closest thing you can get when doing lifting weight when lifting weights, I find.
absolutely.
And tell me then, Jack. So aside from like doing steps and stuff, do you have any other preferred form of cardio, or is that your preferred method?
Yeah, sure. So I think my main sort of preferred cardio choice is just sports alongside of like my step goal.
Yeah,
So for example, I play football twice a week. So I know that I'm going to be doing cardio through doing that, either in a game or at training. So if people have kind of like listening to this and they've got sports that they do, that's definitely a form of cardio that you
yeah,
could do or class as it anyway. And if I wasn't doing sports, I would be hard pressed to ask what would be my most enjoyable form of cardio because I just hate cardio in the gym. It's just boring. Like,
yeah.
I really do not enjoy it, but I would probably just hop on a bike. That would be my thing, realistically, if I
Sure.
was to choose
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. And then segueing onto nutrition, then Jack, what would you say are some common myths or misconceptions that people have when it comes to just dieting and getting leaner?
Mm. I think in terms of like a misconception, I feel like the more I've obviously kind of gone through different diets and different methods of dieting, obviously with contest prep and photo shoots and just
Yeah.
generally getting leaner, I think the more I've found around your like nutrient timing and doing that is it's never led to me looking really much different in terms of actually how I diet and how I feel. So, for
Yeah.
example, in the past, I've done 6 meals a day, made sure I got 30, 40 grams of protein in every 2 to 4 hours, and that would be like religion. Whereas now, I'll probably get two big meals of like 70 grams of protein each time, and then
Yeah.
maybe one then meal with 20 grams, and it doesn't really make a difference to how I look or how I perform, and I feel just as good on it. So that's definitely one of the big misconceptions, which
Mm.
I think is obviously there's studies behind it and everything. So I'm not going to disprove that or anything. But for me, I've definitely found that that is one thing that I care a lot less about now is the certain optimal amount of protein in each meal, and I rather just eat for my hunger, eat for my enjoyment, than anything else.
And it's not that freaking important, like after your workout to bring your I used to like have the protein shake with me, Jack.
Mm,
In the gear bag ready. And it's like if you don't have that protein shake 5 minutes post-workout, you've lost all your gains. It is a-okay to have a shower, to get home, to drive home and have it then. That's definitely something I can relate to on mealtime. And what about supplements then, Jack? What are your preferred supplements?
so at the minute, I just take away protein. I'm really, really bad at the minute with supplements. Like I need to go and buy a creatine. I just haven't bought one yet. I just like I need to go and get one. But I will literally just supplement my protein powder and then a bar as well, just to help me get extra protein in for the day. So I'm really quite minimal on the supplement side of things now than I used to be. Like I used to take like HBCD, which is highly branched cyclic dextrin for like carbohydrates during your workout.
Intra workout, yeah.
Yeah, I used to have like pre-workouts quite religiously, but now I just
Yeah.
have coffee or a monster. Obviously, I think obviously creatine was a normal thing of part of my day, but I don't really take that much
Yeah.
anymore. I think as I've come away from like bodybuilding specifically, my supplement intake definitely has reduced, which helps with the expenses every month as well, I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. And what are your thoughts then on water intake? Do you drink much a day, Jack?
Now I do at the minute. Now I'm doing the intermittent fasting. Beforehand, it wasn't really that much, to be honest. But ever since I started doing the intermittent fasting a bit more, I've definitely found my water intake go up quite a bit.
Yeah.
And this is just to curb hunger. And during my workouts, because I'm obviously a bit hungrier when I'm training, because I've obviously not broke the fast yet, I will tend to drink
You
more during
train
my.
fasted as well, Jack?
Yeah, so sort of my last meal is usually about 10 p.m. and then I'll train at about 10 a.m., maybe 11 a.m. So by that sort of time at the end of that workout, I'm starting to get quite hungry.
Sure.
So the
Yeah.
water intake naturally goes up just to help me a bit of energy and actually just helps me with a bit of a pump as well in the gym.
Yeah.
But water intake's gone up because of that. But beforehand, it was probably quite poor. It was more so the water
Yeah.
that was in coffee than anything else that was getting. So
And are you currently doing the 16/8 intermittent fasting?
I mean, I've not like looked into exactly what the 16/8 is, but I will essentially either start eating at 1 and then finish whenever the last meal is. So whether that's 9 or 10. And then it would just be the same process the next day. So I guess you could class that as 8 hours
Sure.
of eating. But I just do it over 3 meals. So the meal I
Yeah.
have at 2, meal I have with Molly and Hugo at sort of 6 o'clock, and then the meal I have before bed, which is a very small sort of protein meal. Um, Whether that carries on when I come out of the diet, I don't know. I quite like it. I quite like the need to not have breakfast in the morning. But as calories go up, I'm sure I might need to maybe introduce food back in during that meal. Maybe
Gotcha.
we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of calories, Jack, so something that we don't have here at the moment in Ireland is calories on the menus in restaurants.
Oh,
But
okay.
I know that's something that's been brought into the UK. What are your thoughts on that?
I really like it. Like, I know obviously there's a mixed opinion on why, and like maybe it's bad for other people. But I think for the majority, obviously speaking in majority terms here, not singling out people that potentially obviously they don't like the idea of it, but for the majority to see what's in the foods that they have,
Yeah.
I think is a great thing to kind of tune to the right choices of maybe what they're trying to achieve, or just bring more awareness to what's in stuff as well. Because if you're going out, let's just say TGI Fridays, and you look at the starter and you see your starter has 1200 calories in, that just triggers a little bit different sort of thought process for the majority of people that are trying to lose weight, to maybe pick something that might be better, and ultimately it's probably going to serve them really well to stay on track with their diet a bit more, or at least sort of see more progress in what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be all for it being brought in, to be honest. Like it's gonna be education, just even I was in Starbucks and it was in Lisbon in Portugal, so they had the calories there as well. And you look at like a basic flapjack,
Yeah, scary, isn't it?
450 calories.
Yeah.
And someone gets like, imagine just grabbing like a cappuccino, like a cappuccino grande there in Starbucks. On top of that, you could have consumed 800 to 900, like maybe 800 calories there quite easily. And then you're still hungry afterwards. That's the worst thing.
Yeah, because that's a snack. When
It's
reality, that would be a huge lunch. Like,
what would what would you say are like some of the meals that being served at restaurants, Jack, that if the calories were on them, it would make people think twice?
probably anything at TGI Fridays. um, yeah, like I think like obviously like big burger meals massively.
Yeah.
Like, I think people think pizza's really bad, but pizza's actually really not that terrible when it comes to how much you get for the calories that's in it.
Yeah,
Um,
it depends how it's cooked, to be fair, as well.
yeah, this is true if it's drizzled
Yeah,
with oil and stuff as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
But definitely, I think the big burger restaurants, if people are so excited to be really healthy, they might struggle a little bit, because those are usually the big the big calorie ones with a massive burger and bacon and cheese and fries alongside of it. It's getting me hungry talking about it now. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jack, speaking of which, we by the time this will be aired, so it's mid-November now. This will be aired just the start of December, and coming up to the Christmas season, Christmas time, people seem to have like a lot of fear and anxiety over like just 2 or 3 weeks of like gaining a lot of weight and then being back to square one in January. What are some tips that you give for anyone looking to enjoy the holidays without completely sabotaging their fitness levels?
Yeah, sure. I think everyone's going to do this very differently. And for some people, the advice would be to just like kind of enjoy those few days around Christmas, and then the days that you are obviously maybe not on sort of celebrating or whatever, then obviously just get back to normal and enjoy yourself and get back into your routine. But obviously, then for other people, they might just want to take a full 2 weeks of not tracking or not worrying about anything, and just like maybe having a bit of a blowout, because some people actually need that as well. Like, for example, people who are very meticulous and they track everything might actually
Yeah,
do well with having a few days of actually not doing that and not worrying about tracking for a
scaling it back.
few days.
Yeah,
So I think everyone individually has a different approach to it. But for me personally, I will always take those days off. I'll enjoy them, and then deal with it the days after if there's any damage. But there normally isn't, because I think once you've tracked for long enough and you know what's in food and you know when you feel full, there is that element of I probably shouldn't really eat anymore because I feel like crap anyway. Like I
yeah,
remember like post show in 2018, that was the worst feeling ever. I was sat in bed for 3 hours with massive regret of just eating too much because I'd obviously deprived for months.
yeah,
So I remember that feeling, to know not to go too much over now, because it just doesn't feel good.
yeah,
Also
yeah,
enjoy
man.
yourself, and don't feel like you need to restrict, because any weight that you gain over 3 or 4 days of Christmas can be taken off really quickly. So it's not the end of the
And
world.
a lot of it is water weight, it's
Yeah,
carbohydrate weight. You lose it after, as you said, a couple of days.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%. A couple of weeks
yeah,
at
I,
max.
I yeah. No, I'm with you on that, man. Like, to be fair, I feel that most people worry about like the 5 weeks between New Year's or Thanksgiving and New Year's Day,
Mm,
when they forget about then the other 47 weeks of the year. So if you're someone listening and you are consistent for the most part, really when you break Christmas down, like there's a few core days there. But
Yeah.
even some days in between, like as you said, those days you might scale it back and be more on track. Pick your days. Don't do the absolute balls in it and go all out if that makes you feel uncomfortable, and just get back at it. I'm with you on that, Jack. We will wrap things up, Jack. What are, just before we get on some quick fire, is there any kind of goals that you're currently working on or excited about yourself?
Yeah, I'm quite excited to probably go into my first lean bulk for what's been the longest time. That's probably going to start in the new year. So I've always been one of these people when I diet, obviously I get to where I want to, but I
Yeah,
always find like I never have the right opportunity to properly take myself for a reverse diet. So I'm quite excited for that because I do it with clients, I do it with them, and they get great success from it. So
yeah,
my kind of goal is into Christmas, start building food back up, and then in the new year, go into a phase where I can actually start building up some strength again because I do miss being stronger in the gym and everything. Like I'm not as strong as I used to be, and that's one goal I'd like to chase down while I focus
yeah.
on my football and being athletic. Really, like my goals has definitely changed over the years. If
I
you were
love
to
it, man.
ask if you were to ask 2018 Jack what would he be doing 5 years from now or 4 years from now, he certainly wouldn't have said focusing on football performance and weightlifting in the gym. It would be literally, I'd probably answer with I'd be in a full bulk mode ready for 2023 season. So it's a different world, but I'm enjoying it. I just enjoy being fit, healthy, and
Yeah,
athletic at the same time, to be able to go and run on a football pitch and be very like kind of good in terms of pace and keeping up with fitness, but then also go into the gym and do some heavy deadlifts and stuff. Like I like that flexibility of both.
I
So
love it, man. I'm literally with you 100% on that. Like, I'd like to be able to go and run a 5 or 10K if I wanted, but I'd also like to think I'd be able to put up some decent numbers at least in the gym if you were to enter that world.
yeah.
Yeah, Jack, we can end it there. That's awesome, man. We'll just finish off with a couple of quick rapid fire questions. The first one being, what is one new habit you've implemented the last 6 months?
I guess it would probably be intermittent fasting. That would be one of the
Yeah.
main habits, and I think that's there to stay as well. So
Awesome. Best book you've read this year?
oh, you're gonna shoot me for this. I actually have not read a book this year, so you can say that you can keep that on the podcast. I really don't like reading. Like I'll watch YouTube
Sure.
until obviously loads of hours, but yeah, reading I'm terrible. I just hate it. So no books.
Gotcha. I'll give one of my personal favorites, The Power One More by Ed Milet. We can make up first. That's a good one.
Give that one.
Jack, if you could go back in time when you started, what's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
I think take time with what you do, and whenever you're trying new things, give it some time. Like I would always try and do things like new methods of nutrition or training, and I give it a few weeks before I change things over. So if
Yeah,
you're trying a new thing, give it time. Like anything,
be
it's
patient.
never gonna change overnight.
Yeah,
You have to be patient.
yeah. What do you feel, Jack, is the most underrated gym exercise that most people don't do enough
Lateral raises.
of? Why do you say lateral raises?
Because most people have massive front delts, but they don't have side or rears, and usually lateral raises is the reason that's lacking. So many
That's
people
a
go
good
in and
point, man.
they'll do all the pressing in the world, but they won't do anything for their side or rear delts.
That's an interesting one. No
Yeah.
one's ever said that. I like it. Jack, what is one question you wish people asked you more?
One question. I think more like how to stay consistent than how to lose body fat. I think people know how to lose body fat, but most people don't know how to stay consistent. And I think now I have a lot more answers for that than I do on how to lose body fat, because that's simple. The other parts around it is actually what makes it happen with the consistency.
Unreal. I love that one. Jack, this has been amazing. I want to acknowledge you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been great hearing your story about transition from the lifestyle lifter to the bodybuilding, back to the more lifestyle to the athletic phase. And you've just shared a lot of knowledge there all around training, nutrition, training to failure, supplements, calories, food intake. For any of our listeners out there, I always like to leave with some takeaways. What are like 1 to 3 takeaways you'd like to give our listeners to implement?
I think obviously, like the main takeaway for anyone probably listening to this is the biggest thing is to have an idea of what you want from fitness and health. Like a lot of people, the reason why they never reach their goal is because they have no idea what they actually want. They say they want to lose 10 pounds, but what does losing that 10 pounds make you feel like? So have a really clear cut out design of what you want your life or physique to look like, because that then helps you with the pursuit of actually going forward with it. So many people will just stop in their tracks with actually what they want because it doesn't mean anything to them. When someone says, obviously, like I say, I want to lose 10 pounds, it doesn't mean anything. It's just something we say. It's like, okay, I want to lose a stone, I want to lose 2 stone. But what does losing that stone or 2 stone mean to you, and how is that going to impact and affect your life? So whenever you start, if you listen to this and you're thinking about starting in the new year, or you want to start a diet, think to yourself hard about what that is that you want to achieve and what it's going to make you feel like, because you're more likely to actually probably achieve that than you would just sort of say some random meaningless target to yourself in the new year. So get really clear on that, and I think that will kind of usually pave the way for your results for however long you want to achieve them for.
100%. 100%. Jack, that's awesome. This is the Lifestyle Lifters show. So we'll finish with our final question. What is your definition of living a successful lifestyle, Jack?
Living a successful lifestyle, I think enjoying physically how you feel, mentally how you feel as well, and being able to adapt to whatever situation comes your way in terms of fitness, health, and just performing at your best. I feel that's my sort of sum up for how I feel with a lifestyle.
Yeah. Awesome. Jack, this has been amazing, man. For listeners out there who want to learn more about you and what you offer, where's the best place, Jack, to send them?
Just on Instagram at the minute, which is just Jack Gadd underscore. Obviously, I've got Facebook and TikTok, but I use Instagram mainly as my sort of main source. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to message me on there or anything.
So it's Jack Gadd, JACKGADD underscore, and
That's
that's your IG handle. I'll
yeah,
post that in the show notes, Jack. Jack, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. And for all the listeners out there, if you did get value from this, please leave a review. Please share the show on your IG stories. Tag me at Mac Lifestyle Fitness. Tag Jack, and we will reshare it on your stories. Jack, thanks so much again for coming on.
amazing. I appreciate you asking me to come on, and it was great to come on and chat with you.
Great chatting.